Our scripture reading will be from Romans chapter 1, verse 16. Romans 1, verse 16. It reads, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel. It is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jews first, and then to the Gentiles."
Well, we are indeed privileged here at Sunset. The phrase that you often hear around here, sunset means the world, is very true when it comes to our chapel services and our missions department. It really does mean the world. It means the world to us to have so many missionaries and so many people coming back from mission fields around the world to share with us what it means to be people of God who take that powerful gospel to another culture, another land, and to share it there and see what God can do in those places. And since school began, we've had missionaries coming here from places all over the world. We've heard about works in Latin America. We've heard about works in Brazil. We've heard about work in the Philippines and other places in Asia. We've heard from missionaries in various places, and tomorrow we'll hear from a missionary to Egypt, among the Arabic-speaking world. But today we have the privilege of hearing from a missionary that has been in southern Africa for a long, long time. Chester and Angela were here in school in the 70s, somewhere around 74, 75. They left and went back to southern Africa. And they've been there ever since. And they have very seldom been back to the States. I'd almost forgotten what Chester looked like. It's been so long since we've seen them. But they have a mission and they have a story. And if you ever have a chance to just sit down and talk with missionaries like this, who have stayed the course, who have been there for decades and have served the Lord and have been through all kinds of trials and tribulations, and yet they have stayed and they have served and they have seen disciples won and they've seen churches planted and they've seen what God can do through His people. So I want you to welcome Chester Woodhall in the way that we always welcome people who come to this pulpit. Chester, come in. We love you, brother. We appreciate you. Thanks.
My granddad, who was born in the 19th century in a place called Birmingham in England, said to me, "Chester, if you preach, stand up, speak up, and then shut up." I know there's a time constraint here. I've got a nod there. I'm used to preaching for a long time. It may help me if you can give me a signal when I need to shut up. Okay. I was preaching standing on an anthill in Zambia in the early 70s. Anthills come quite high. Stand and preach on an anthill, and a crowd of anything up to 50 or 100 will gather and listen. And this one guy pushed through to the front and he said, "Chongo lekeni chongo," which in English is stop, shut up. So I did, and he said, "Look, you preach, you preach, you preach, you don't know when to stop." He said, "I want to become a Christian. There are other people here who want to become a Christian. How can we get baptized when you just keep preaching?" So I learned something there that at times, as my granddad said, you need to shut up. We've spent almost 50 years now on the mission field in Africa. I can remember from sunset, we would be told, go to the mission field, stay until you are grey. My hair back then was black. I've stayed until it's grey, and I've stayed until it's white. And we plan to keep on staying there and sharing the good news of Jesus Christ. So we've come on a rare trip back to the USA, and it is a heartwarming moment to be back here at sunset, which means a lot to us. We've come from the other side of the world, come through several time zones, 3 continents. We've come from where there are billions of people whom Jesus loves, and where we have done our best to carry out the Great Commission of Jesus Christ. Our association with Sunset goes back, as we said, to the early 70s. Points learned from our mission work. It was suggested to me some things to put into the presentation. Here are some points made. What do we go to the mission field for? We go there to proclaim Jesus as Lord. That's what we should do. It's what we should continue to do and not get sidetracked. Proclaim Jesus as Lord. For us, one of our strengths has been a strong Christian marriage. It can be a lot of ups and downs on the mission field. You need a strong Christian marriage to survive through it all. And then there needs to be a strong partnership with supporting churches. We have three supporting churches, and they've been with us from the 1970s up until now. It's not a matter of money, it's a matter of encouragement and prayer as much as anything else. When we were in a place called Bopwood, Hatswana, there was a coup d'etat. It seemed quite a peaceful place. We'd go to the cinema, and the president and his wife would be sitting there without bodyguards in the cinema, the same as us. It was quite a peaceful place. Then there was a coup d'etat, and you'd be amazed, or I was amazed, at how many different militia and army groups were there shooting at each other. From one of our supporting churches, we had a phone call and said, "You're on TV. We can see you on CNN. There's a revolution where you are. Are you okay?" It was good to get that encouragement and support. We were okay. We just made sure that we kept our heads down below the windowsill level. That way the bullets go over you. You need to have a strong partnership with supporting churches. You need to have a strong partnership with fellow missionaries. It's important to be in a team with your fellow missionaries, not to be at war with them. Okay, teamwork, partnership with fellow missionaries is important. And then it's important to have a strong partnership with local churches. After all, that's why we're there, to lead people to Christ and to plant local churches. So what is the secret of the time of being there and not giving up and coming back within a month or two or a short period of time? The secret is in the Bible reading we had. Romans chapter 1 and verse 16. Commitment to Christ. Above all, we've got commitment to Christ. We can go through anything that comes in our direction. I was also asked to come up with some statistics. I think someone said, it might be me said it, there are big lies, little lies in statistics. It's also a question of how you build up your statistics, but for those who are statistically inclined, here are some statistics for churches of Christ, basically from Congo down to Cape Town. And there are a lot of congregations now. And in some of these countries, like Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, you find there's a Church of Christ, it seems, everywhere. You go from one village to another, one township to another, and people will say, yes, that's where the Church of Christ meets. The churches of Christ are significant in those areas. Probably the most volatile and dangerous place that we've done mission work is Congo. I can remember on one occasion in Congo, driving down a bush track and being ambushed by soldiers with guns, AK-47s, who came round the vehicle, pointed them at us, and then told us to get out the vehicle. This looked as though it could be the end. They were not very friendly. So what do you do in a situation like that? You pray. Number one is to pray. Secondly, I gave them Bibles. No book but the Bible. They may be armed rebels of some kind or another, but they need the scriptures, and gave them tracts. I said, we're here to preach Christ. They said, well, okay, carry on. And then they melted back into the bush. Congo was a different kind of place. So we originally come from England, from the town of Birmingham. And from England, we went to Zambia. Then we went to the country known as Bophuthatswana, Bop for short, much of which is Kalahari Desert. Bop, as I've said, disappeared while we were there. That was a blessing in disguise. I'll tell you why. As a result of Bop being taken over by South Africa with their troops coming in, we were then offered permanent residence. No more visas. Previously, we'd been on 3-month visas. They said, would you like permanent residence? So we said, yes, please. And then after that, they said, would you like citizenship? We said, yes, please. So then we had South African passports as well as British passports. And we could travel anywhere in South Africa. So we went England, Zambia, Bop, and then we found that we were missionaries in South Africa, although that hadn't been the original plan. And in more recent years, we've been in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. It's one of the poorest areas of South Africa. Where we are, place where we are is about halfway between Cape Town and Durban. So, in Zambia, we saw thousands of conversions to Christ. It's easily, at least, 4,000 baptisms into Christ. From where we were on the Congolese border, we could work both Congo and Zambia. Then it was Bob. Then it was the Eastern Cape. I think I'm being hurried up a bit to make sure I do shut up on time. Then in the Eastern Cape, we have used some different approaches at times. I've lectured in the local universities. They've given me status as a campus minister. This has had quite a lot of advantages. We've had lecturers converted to Christ. We've had students converted to Christ. And in the centre of East London, where we live, there is a congregation called the Downtown Church of Christ. It meets in a university auditorium free of charge. Out of the campus ministry has come that congregation and has come members of the church in other congregations as well. We have also been involved in the community. I served a 5-year period as a ward councillor for the suburb in which we lived. So that's dealing with community issues. One of my probably most famous speeches was when I spoke out at the council and said no to legalized brothels. And I won. Okay. And people said I should not bring my faith into the council. What's the point of being a Christian and a councillor if you don't say, from a Christian point of view, no, N-O? And I got it set up so that every councillor who was there had to stand up and say yes or no. So they couldn't hide behind anonymity. And I won. They said no to legalized brothels. As a result of that, being so involved in the community, we were able to start and plant a church in that community, a Church of Christ that is meeting and thriving now. Angela, my wife, was elected to the provincial parliament. She was the only white lady in the parliament. She gave a speech there on the amazing grace of God. I think they are still recovering. It was a very good speech for them. They should know about the amazing grace of God. We found that the things like this, and we could do this because remember now we were South Africans, they gave us citizenship. And the people who voted for us were predominantly black. So we have at times had an integrative approach. We do live in an area where there's quite a lot of wildlife. God's creatures are not far from where we are. I can remember baby lions at the game park and having them go all over us and our children. It's rather like having little kittens. It was a nice experience. They're a bit bigger now. I wouldn't do it now. They look pretty fierce, those same lions. Sometimes the animals don't stay in the bush. They can become traffic hazards. And then some can get angry. Hippos probably kill more people than lions. They're not as friendly as they might look. So, what have we achieved in northern Zambia and southern Congo? Again, for those who are into statistics. Many congregations, hundreds of congregations, thousands of Christians. A good point is that the congregations have continued to multiply. There are new congregations being planted by the existing congregations, and that is good news. Earlier this week, I heard from Congo of 30 congregations, old and new, in one area, for which we had been the missionaries. We have tried to make sure that congregations are self-sustaining and self-financing. In BOP, which basically where we're talking about is Kalahari Desert, there's 20 plus churches, itinerant camp meetings. There is an evangelist, a local evangelist there who circulates with his vehicle and is on local support. There is outreach to Bushmen and who live in the Kalahari Desert. We have seen Bushmen come to Christ and be baptized and churches formed. And there is a locally financed Christian school in the Kalahari. I'm a marriage officer, had to pass an exam. Much of it was in a language I didn't speak, but I still passed. Sometimes for the weddings that I perform, people dress in traditional Xhosa dress, but in life in general, everybody wears modern clothes. We don't wear ties now in South Africa. Many wear shirts like this, which are called Madiba shirts, because when President Nelson Mandela was inaugurated, this was the kind of shirt that he wore, and basically from then on, ties were out. The people in rural areas can still be found living in huts like this. The idea was if a man was a polygamist, then he'd have a hut for each wife. Polygamy is still there in some circles. The president, who has just been ousted, in fact had several wives and just continued to marry wives. He was polygamous and pagan. Okay, so he, in his kraal, needed quite a lot of huts like that. Right, people are moving from rural areas to town, and so there are a lot of shanty towns called informal settlements, and we try and plant churches in each of those shanty towns. There is a children's home associated with us in one of these informal settlements. A lady called Agnes runs the children's home in her own home. She's got about 25 children, all of whom were abandoned children, abandoned as kids. And then she took them into her home. In South Africa's Eastern Cape, there are now congregations, small and large, across the whole province, church leaders who have been through our extension training program. We've done radio programs. We've done radio programs everywhere we've been, and in Zambia TV programs. With the radio programs, sometimes people have turned up at the radio station and said, I want to be baptized. And we're not there because you record the programs in advance, but they don't realize that. So then the radio station phones, calls, American English, calls, and then we baptize them. We use WBS a lot in our outreach because WBS reaches people in places that we wouldn't necessarily meet or know about. About half of our WBS students are in prison, because in prison in South Africa you don't have internet access. So they are quite happy. They've got time to do WBS correspondence courses. Prison ministry, a motivation is what Jesus said. In prison ministry, we do try to get a change of heart and a change of behavior. We've had hundreds over time who have come to Christ in prison. We baptize them in the prison. We use a big bath in the prison hospital, and they're baptized into Christ. And we do follow up with them when they're discharged to make sure they go to a local church. In one of our congregations, the preacher there, who is a part-time preacher, he works as a plumber. He was converted in prison, then did part-time Bible training with us, and now is a preacher. I could give many examples like that, but remember, I've got to shut up very soon. We've got something called the Eastern Cape Bible College. Quite a lot of the inspiration for that has come from Sunset and its programs. It's part-time, and it's to develop people as church leaders for the new congregations we talk about. Campus teaching, I think, is the next slide. It's not always easy where we are. I have been taken hostage on one occasion, where they take you hostage for money. It gave me an opportunity to talk to the people who did it for the best part of the day. And the hostage takers did come back later, and they apologized for taking me hostage. One of those was converted and is a part-time preacher now in our churches. So at times we have a different approach. I've had about 5 lots of car hijackings in Zambia and in South Africa. It's not a pleasant experience when they come at you with guns. On one occasion, the one guy said to the other, "Shoot him, let's take the vehicle." So I gave him the keys quickly, praying as I did so. We got that vehicle back. They were outside a bank in another town. One of our preachers recognized the vehicle, contacted the police. They went into the bank that the hijackers had gone into, and where they presumably were about to do a bank robbery, and arrested them, and then gave me the vehicle back. So we got the vehicle back, in short, and then I had to pay the insurance back. These things happen. We have a lot of young people in our congregations, which is good for the future. Our house was used as the basis, as the place to start one congregation. You see them meeting. You'll see that they're happy after worship. What are our plans for the future? When we go back next month, we want to plant more preaching points and congregations. We definitely want to develop more church leaders. With our prison ministry, we want to get more local participation in the prison ministry. And the star of our prison ministry program is my wife, Angela. And we want the congregations to be self-sustaining and self-supporting churches. Please pray for us as we return to the mission field. God is moving in Africa. God is moving everywhere. Stand up, speak up, and shut up. I'm now about to stop. Okay.